Dominic, it looks as if the witness is not perked up after lunch. She looks extremely tired, hand on her face.
Not yet. I meant after the prosecution came back.
So you think she'll selectively be perky for the prosecution?
I think she'll be a little more awake because they'll be a little tighter in their questioning.
That's what so that would be cooperative. That would be, she would be more cooperative to the prosecution, which also isn't very good because then she's showing she has a different affect behavior depending on if it's someone she likes that's asking her question.
Or someone who's being more courteous back at her and moving things along and not repeating the same question several different ways without much nuance.
Okay, and you see the attorneys conferring their mark on Miriam Don West. Listen in.
Yes, we are.
Ms. Jeantel, we are back on the record after lunch, and we are going to play for you part of the recorded interview that you gave to Mr. De La Rianda in person in 2012. We're going to play a piece of it, so I'd like you to listen in particular to the first question, the first comments that Mr. De La Rianda makes, and then your answer right after that. Do you know what we're focusing on now?
Yes, sir.
And we're going to continue it a little longer after that. Feel free to listen to it carefully, but the one thing we want to know for sure is what you said following Mr. De La Rianda's first comments and question.
Yes, sir.
Did he ever describe, the guy now, he's out of the car and he's chasing? I know you said the guy was following, but did he ever say the guy got out of the car?
You want that too?
I want to know the truth, whether, did he say that or not? If he didn't say that, that's fine. I mean, I don't need to know.
Like when you walking.
I know Trayvon is running, right, or walking.
Yeah.
My question is, did Trayvon ever describe to you, hey, like if I see a football game, I say, the guy was running fast, or the guy, ran to the left. Did he ever?
When you was at the mail thing, the man was on the phone.
Right.
That's what he telling me.
I'm sorry, what?
He's telling me the man was on the phone. He put his hoodie on.
Right.
So the man was still in the car. Then Trayvon started walking. Then he said, I think the man got off by some reason.
That's what you believe? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because he said the man was still following him.
Okay, so he didn't say like the man got out.
Yeah.
He just believed that.
Yeah.
But Trayvon didn't tell you the man got out of the car.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
That's the video or the audio clip that we wanted to proffer to this witness.
Well, then ask her your next question for the proffer.
After hearing Mr. De La Rianda's comment and question that ends with, but did he ever say the guy got out of the car? Your answer was, in fact, you want that too, wasn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'm going to ask that this be played for the jury. Thank you.
She's agreeing. It's not a dispute, so why is it being played? And I apologize, I'm just not trying to make a speaking objection, but...
I understand what you're saying, that it would not be impeachment.
Right.
The objection is, why is it going to be played? Because it's not impeachment, since she indicated that was her answer.
The court ruled, I thought, a moment ago when I said I'd like to play it for the jury, and the court assented.
That there was an objection, and the objection was that that statement was not impeachment, since she had said that, yes, that's what I said.
This witness squarely denied having said it before the jury.
Okay, well, you can ask her that question
And I
again.
want to play the recording for the jury so they can hear it for themselves, not just the sort of naked answer, yes, I did say that, you want that too. I want the context of it. And I want the nuance of the language and the idea that this witness was, in a sense, saying to Mr. Delirionda, do you want me to give you an answer on that too? And Mr. Delirionda's response is, I want to know the truth.
I understand, because I've heard it too, and I understand your argument, but for impeachment, you have the witness, in this case, listen to, in other cases it's a read, to themselves what the question and answer was, and then you ask them, is that what you said? And they admit it, or they say, yes, I did, or no, I didn't. If they say, no, I didn't, then that's impeachment, and you play it for the jury, and she's admitting that that's what it was. So,
Your Honor, my response there is that...
I'm not finished.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. So to play that in front of the jury is not impeachment. That's the objection. And you can ask Ms. Jeantel in front of the jury, did you have an opportunity to listen to your statement? Yes. And do you now, I'm going to ask you the question again, is that your answer? If she gives an answer that is not what you think is appropriate, then you play it to the jury.
May I respond briefly?
Yes, you may.
When this witness was confronted with a transcript before
She
the jury...
wasn't given a transcript on that. She asked for one, and you said you wanted to play the tape. And that's when I said we'd do that outside the presence of the jury. She was not provided a transcript on that questioning.
Your Honor, I'm sorry, but I believe that she was. I handed her 2 transcripts, and my transcript said, you want that too. Mr. Delirionda's transcript said, you want that too, but it had another word or two after it, and the witness under oath in front of the jury said, I never said that. I want to let the jury hear this witness's own words. Now, I have the right to confront her with her own words in front of the jury, and her own words are on this recording. So I want to play the recording for the jury as to what this witness denied, first of all, under oath, which has now been, I think, indisputably proven to be true.
Okay. You can ask her that question, and if she denies it, you can play it for the jury. But you've given her an opportunity to listen to it and review it as if it were a transcript that she would review that had that on there, and she's now giving you her answer. If she answers differently when the jury is present, then you may play it.
Our position is we have the right
I understand your position. That's my ruling. Okay, are we ready?
Any further?
No.
Thank you, Judge.
I'll refer you back to the court's rules. Are we ready to bring the jury in?
Yes, sir.
Jurors are present.
Please be seated. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. And while you're getting settled with your notepads and stuff, I'm going to ask you questions. If your answer is yes to any of my questions, please raise your hand. During the lunch recess, did any of you have any conversations amongst yourselves or with anybody else about the case? No hands are being raised. Did any of you read or listen to any radio, television, or newspaper reports about the case? No hands are being raised. Did any of you use any type of an electronic device to go on the internet to do independent research about the case, people, places, things, or terminology? No hands are being raised. And finally, did any of you read or create any emails, text messages, Twitters, tweets, blogs, or social networking pages about the case? Okay, no hands are being raised. Thank you. Mr. West, you may proceed.
Good afternoon, Ms. Jeantel.
Good afternoon.
Before the lunch break, we were talking about a statement that you made to Mr. Della Rionda on April 2nd, 2012. Specifically, a part of that interview where Mr. Della Rionda asked you, did Trayvon Martin ever say that the guy got out of the car? Do you remember those questions?
Yes, sir.
And you remember me presenting you with a transcript of that interview where your answer was, you want that too. Remember that?
Yes, sir.
And you also saw the transcript with from Mr. Della Rionda that said your answer was, you want that too, correct?
Yes, sir.
And when I asked you, did you in fact say that, you said, I did not say that, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, in the break before we reconvened, we have actually played that recording for you, have we not?
Yes, sir.
And we played that particular portion where Mr. Della Rionda said, did Trayvon Martin ever say that the guy got out of the car? Did you hear that?
Yes, sir.
And you heard your answer as well, correct?
Yes, sir.
And in fact,
Yes, sir.
your answer was to Mr. Della Rionda's question, you want that too, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
Nothing further. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you very much. Redirect.
Well, let's get first things out of the way. I gather I'm the bald-headed dude, for purpose of the record. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
I've got one of those last names that most people can't pronounce. And so, anyway. I'm curious. You grew up, I guess, in a Haitian family?
Yes, sir.
Your mother speaks Creole or Haitian?
Creole. Yes, sir.
And the reason is I wonder in terms of from a culture or just from learning English. English was not my native tongue, and I spoke Spanish first. So in doing that, did you learn Creole first, or did you learn English first in terms, and I'm curious if sometimes there's a cultural thing. When we say things, it isn't as clear to everybody.
Creole and Spanish.
Okay. You also mentioned that you were shown a letter, correct? I believe it's a defense exhibit. Madam Clerk, do you have that in front of you? Oh, I'm sorry. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Defense exhibit 17. You recognize this here?
Yes, sir. Please stand up and wait.
It's Defense Exhibit 17, which is the letter that you wrote to, actually you didn't write, you had somebody else write on behalf of you to Sabrina Fulton, the victim's mother?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you need to speak, it's confusing because there's two microphones here, you need to speak into that one. You recognize the letter?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you had a friend of yours write it, correct?
Yes, sir.
Because you can write in cursive, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you also can't read in cursive, correct?
Yes, sir.
Leading. This is redirect.
I'm glad to rephrase it. Can you read in cursive? Can you read cursive?
No, sir.
Can you write in cursive?
No, sir.
You were asked about the friend that wrote that letter, correct?
Yes, sir.
The friend that you asked to write it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You were also asked about numerous questions about the interview that you gave me, the statement you gave me when I went down to, and I apologize, me in terms of with an investigator too, down in Miami. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Mr. West asked you about the fact that the state attorney's office from Jacksonville had been appointed by the governor, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In terms of you found out that we were handling the case.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you agreed to speak to me, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And in fact, as you stated, 2 cars went to a place where you were at a friend's house and picked you up and took you down to take a statement, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You were pretty emotional at that statement, weren't you?
Yes, sir.
Was it hard for you to talk about this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And in that statement, you, as best you could, attempted to tell what you remember?
I'm objecting now. This is the third of a series of leading questions. This is redirect. There should be direct questions rather than leading.
I'll be glad to rephrase it, Your Honor.
Thank you, Sustained.
You recall in that statement stating that, I'm sorry, the April 2nd statement that Mr. West asked you about, that Trayvon Martin was running away from the person?
Yes, sir.
And you also made reference that Trayvon Martin said the man described him as a creepy white.
Object that it is, well, at this point, beyond the scope of the cross-examination and not responsive to one of the issues raised during the cross. And it's also leading.
Overruled, and as to the first 2 objections, as to the leading, I will give a little leeway to get a frame of reference, and then make sure your questions aren't leading.
Yes, Your Honor. My question is, do you recall Mr. West asking you that Trayvon Martin referred to the man that was following him as a creepy white cracker?
Yes, sir.
I didn't say that. That's a mischaracterization of the testimony.
I'm sustained because I think the words were creepy ass cracker.
I apologize. Were the words creepy, pardon my language, creepy ass cracker?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you recall Mr. West asking you about that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And also, and to you, is that a derogatory, or is that the way people speak in your culture, your age group?
Objection leading.
Suggesting an answer?
Overruled.
Yes, sir.
You also made reference at some point that Mr. Trayvon Martin also referred to the person also with the N-word. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And when I say person, he's talking about the person that was following him, referred to using the N-word.
Yes, sir.
By the way, in that letter, may I post? Yes, that letter, Defense Exhibit 17, you actually read it, Trayvon Martin's name is misspelled. Were you aware of that?
No, sir.
It's spelled T-R-E-R.
Overruled.
It's spelled T-R-E-V-O-N. Were you aware of that?
No, sir.
You mentioned also, when asked by Mr. West about the statement that you gave to Mr. Crump by phone, correct? Was that by phone, just to make sure of the record? You weren't there in person, or were you?
By phone.
Okay. And Mr. Crump did not ask you specific questions about certain items or certain questions that I asked you specifically on April 2nd. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Did Mr. Crump ask you specific questions like I did?
No, sir.
You were asked by Mr. West in terms of what happened, and you recall in the interview that you gave me on April the 2nd, the statement you gave, you referred to the man approaching Trayvon Martin. It sounded like a bump. Do you recall using the word bump?
Yes, sir.
Objection. I guess I don't quite understand what's going on here. Is this confronting the witness with her prior statement that he was present for?
What is the objection?
Well, it's leading, and it is improper impeachment. If anything, it's bolstering by a supposed prior consistent statement of some sort.
Overruled on all three.
Do you recall using the word bump in describing what occurred to Trayvon Martin?
Yes, sir.
For the record, do you still live, Mr. West asked you about meeting with two individuals from FDLE in Miami. You still live in Miami, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You were asked by Mr. West about the phone calls that you had with Mr. Trayvon Martin that day on February 26th. Would you agree that the phone records are the best records about that in terms of the length of the calls, whatever the times are?
Yes, sir.
Let me have a moment, Your Honor.
Yes, you may.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Do you have any recross?
Briefly, thank you, Judge. Ms. Jeantel, you were born and raised in Miami, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you spoke English at home?
What age are you talking about, sir?
Well, that's what I'm asking you. Are you saying that English is your third language? That you spoke Creole and Spanish first?
I spoke 3 languages first. I learned how to speak 3 languages first, but Creole was the first one.
Does your mother speak English?
Not that well, sir.
Does she speak English?
Not that well, sir.
I understand she may have an accent or some limitations, but do you speak to her in English?
Sometimes, sir.
And if you're not speaking to her in English, you're speaking to her in Creole?
Yes, sir.
And your father, do you speak to him in English?
Yes, sir.
And when you went to school as a child, kindergarten, did you speak English at school?
Yes, sir.
And have you spoken English to your teachers and classmates in school up through today?
Yes, sir.
Are you claiming in any way that you don't understand English?
I understand you. I understand you. I do understand English.
My question is, when someone speaks to you in English, do you believe that you have any difficulty understanding it because it wasn't your first language?
I understand English really well.
You've spoken it all your life.
Yes, sir.
And there's nothing that I've said to you today in English that
or yesterday that you haven't understood, correct?
No, sir.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about is Mr. Delarianda said in reference to Trayvon Martin saying creepy-ass cracker and using the N-word, that people speak like that in your culture. Did you hear that?
Yes, sir.
Well, what culture is that where people describe other people as creepy-ass crackers?
Pervert. A pervert.
Do you understand what I mean by the culture that you were raised in, the culture that
The
you live
area
in?
I was raised in. What you trying to say?
Right. I'll say it this way. Do people that you live around and with call white people creepy-ass crackers?
Not creepy, but cracker, yeah.
So the creepy is the pervert part that you were talking about?
Yeah.
So forget that for a second. You're saying that in the culture that you live in your community, people there call white people crackers.
Yes, sir.
And do they use the N-word regularly?
Yes, sir.
And you're saying, so did Trayvon Martin. Trayvon Martin referred to white people as crackers, correct?
I don't recall, sir.
Okay, thank you. Nothing else.
Thank you. Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
May Ms. Jeantel be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you very much. You may be excused. If the state will please call your next witness.
We're going to ask us to remain under subpoena.
Okay, we're going to have
Excuse
to,
me.
well, she's going to return to Miami. Will we have notice before she would be called back? The state's releasing them from their portion.
We would
If-
like a few minutes to proffer some testimony is what I'm thinking. It could be at the end of the day today, or it could be at another time later in the proceeding.
Okay. Then I need to know if the defense wants, has any objections to her returning to her home and then bringing her back.
Well, could we do it at the end of the day? And rather than inconvenience the jury, just have Ms. Jeantel wait until the end of the day? Or
Okay, if counsel will please approach. Yes, we are.
Ms. Jeantel, we are back on the record at the moment, and we are going to play for you part of the recorded interview that you gave to Mr. De La Rionda in person in 2012. We're going to play a piece of it, so I'd like you to listen in particular to the first question, the first comments that Mr. De La Rionda makes, and then your answer right after that. Do you know what we're focusing on now?
Yes, sir.
And we're going to continue it a little longer after that. Feel free.
It's not a dispute, so why is it being played? And I apologize, I'm just not trying to make a speaking objection, but...
I understand what you're saying, then it would not be impeachment.
Right.
The objection is, why is it going to be played? Because it's not impeachment, since she indicated that that was her answer.
The court ruled, I thought, a moment ago when I said I'd like to play it for the jury, and the court assented.
That there is an objection, and the objection was that that statement was not impeachment, since she had said that, yes, that's what I said.
This witness squarely denied having said it before the jury.
Okay, well, you can ask her that question
And I
again.
want to play the recording for the jury so they can hear it for themselves, not just the sort of naked answer, yes, I did say that, you want that too. I want the context of it. And I want the nuance of it. Listen to it carefully, but the one thing we want to know for sure is what you said following Mr. De La Rionda's first comments and question.
Yes, sir.
Did he ever describe, the guy now, he's out of the car and he's chasing. I know you said he said the guy was following him, but did he ever say the guy got out of the car?
You want that too?
I want to know the truth, did he say that or not. If he didn't say that, that's fine. I mean, I don't need to know.
Like, when he, walking.
I know Trayvon is running, right, or walking.
Yeah.
My question is, did Trayvon ever describe to you, hey, like if I see a football game, I say, the guy was running fast, or the guy, ran to the left. Did he ever...
When he was at the mail thing, the man was on the phone.
Right.
That's what he was telling me.
I'm sorry, what?
He's telling me the man was on the phone. He put his hoodie on.
Right.
So the man was still in the car. Then Trayvon started walking. Then he said, I think the man got off by some reason.
That's what you believe? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because he said the man was still following him.
Okay, so he didn't say the man got out.
Yeah.
You just believe that.
Yeah.
But Trayvon didn't tell you the man got out of the
Yeah.
car. Okay, all right.
That's the video or the audio clip that we wanted to proffer to this witness.
Well, then ask her your next question for the proffer.
After hearing Mr. De La Rionda's comment and question that ends with, but did he ever say the guy got out of the car? Your answer was, in fact, you want that too, wasn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'm going to ask that this be played for the jury. Thank you.
Dominic, it looks as if the witness is not perked up after lunch. She looks extremely tired, hand on her face.
Not yet. I meant
Just
after the
fatigue.
prosecution came back.
You think she'll selectively be perky for the prosecution?
I think she'll be a little more awake because they'll be a little tighter in their questioning.
That's what so that would be cooperative. That would be, she would be more cooperative to the prosecution, which also isn't very good because then she's showing she has a different affect behavior depending on if it's someone she likes that's asking her question.
Or someone who's being more courteous back at her and moving things along and not repeating the same question several different ways without much nuance.
Okay, and you see the attorneys conferring their Marco Miranda on what's listening.